guest with us today, so let's be on our best behavior. We have someone from the Miami Aquarium joining us, and we have someone from the Tennis Association joining us, just because we have a non-human guest here with us. So those of you, it is a guest. Yes, we will treat it as a guest.
Okay.
And we're all here to learn about crocodiles and how important they are and what we need to do to keep them here with us. So this is our monthly Citizen Scientist Program luncheon. Once again, we thank the foundation for their partnership and generosity. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the mic over to Ramya, and she's going to introduce the program.
All right, thank you all for being here. For those of you that don't know, my name is Ramya. I'm the Director of Environmental Science at the Key Biscayne Community Foundation. As Roxy mentioned, we do these lunches once a month, usually the last Thursday of the month. Today, however, we have Willy Cotto from Miami-Dade County. He is a naturalist with them. He specializes in reptiles, in particular
wildlife biology, yeah.
Fish biology, anything. Much after myself, I get really excited about anything that's creepy crawly or fuzzy or anything. So today he's going to talk to you guys about the American crocodile, an endangered species that is found mostly here in Florida. Outside Florida?
Yep, we'll talk about the range.
They're really, really interesting. A lot of people find them very scary for obvious reasons. They tend to be very shy, much more so than alligators. And I know it's of interest to a lot of you because we do have a crocodile that shows up every now and then here on Key Biscayne. So with that, actually before I get into that, just a very quick story. As many of you know, because of a presentation I gave a few months ago, I do turtle nest evaluations at Bill Bags. There was one morning, my partner and I were walking back through one of the parking lots, and we saw several of the park ranger trucks parked like kind of in a half circle, or like an arc. And we walked over to see what they were doing, and there was a baby crocodile just laying in the parking lot. It was probably 2.5 feet long. And from a distance, it just looked like a piece of bark or a stick. You would never know. And that's one of the reasons they parked their trucks there, because it was literally in the middle of the parking lot. It could have easily been run over. And it was trying so hard to be invisible. It was laying super flat, trying to be like, I hope nobody sees me. Thankfully, somebody spotted it, and they were able to block until I think they ended up relocating it to the Keys. But you know, it was really exciting because it was the first time I'd seen a live crocodile out in the wild parking lot. But anyway, so you know, and I know a few of you have heard stories about like the juvenile crocodiles that have been spotted along the Key, and more recently a fairly large one near the golf course. So they are around, but nobody's been attacked. They're not that scary. They're pretty cool. So I'll let Willy go ahead and tell you more about them.
So like Ramya said, my name is Willy, and I'm absolutely honored to be here with you guys today, talking about one of my favorite types of animals, which is American crocodiles. What are your guys' thoughts on American crocodiles before we get started on this? You said Louisiana. Okay, it's a good observation. Those are American alligators that are over in Louisiana. Yep, so in the bayous of Louisiana, there's about 1 million alligators left there. But here in South Florida, we have American crocodiles. And American alligators. It's the only place in the world where you'll find both. What are some other thoughts? When I say the word American crocodile, what do you guys think?
Honestly, afraid of them. I don't want to see them, and I'm always concerned about small pets.
Okay, so I heard afraid of them, I don't want to see them, afraid for small pets. Okay, all of those are valid. Why are you afraid of them though?
They could eat you.
Well, one at a time.
I don't know what they would have that day, and I think that they would be interested in being.
Okay, perfect. All right. So a lot of times we have misconceived notions of things, especially animals, and crocodiles are one of those things. Crocodiles are cold-blooded ectothermic animals. They don't don't produce their own body heat or maintain their own metabolism, so they're very conservative about what they're going to use their energy on. So pets, absolutely. And it's always important that we're responsible pet owners, make sure we know where our pets are, we're handling them properly. For example, my dog, he goes everywhere with me. I'm surprised he's not here today. But whenever we're somewhere where there could be crocodiles or alligators, potentially he's on a leash. That's to ensure his safety, the safety of the crocodiles, my safety, all of those things. So what other thoughts do we have about crocodiles? The Everglades, yep, that's a great thing. Like I said, the only place where you'll find alligators and crocodiles together. Yes?
Lakes?
Lakes, yeah, lakes are very important. Believe it or not, fresh water is very, very, very important for crocodiles. When I say crocodiles, most people would think saltwater, but we'll talk a little bit about that, okay?
They will cross any amount of land to get to another body of water.
They will. They are very transient animals at times, and they have been known to relocate for great distances back to where they've been captured from or relocated from, okay?
Is that why they do that?
Yeah, it can be. So there's quite a few of us in Miami-Dade County that are interested in crocodiles. One of them is sitting all the way in the back there. It's Heather. She's our division kind of manager for the Eco Adventures team. And we are super interested in crocodiles, but it takes quite a bit of teamwork to make any kind of crocodile research happen or for us to be able to continue to learn about these animals. But a little bit about myself. My name is Willy. I have worked with crocodilians probably since 2001 or so. I was interested in alligators at first, and then I was working with these alligators. Somebody had brought in an American Crocodile for us to use in a program that we were using, and I was just amazed that at that time we thought that there was less than 300 of these individuals in Florida. And that was pretty scary to me because I enjoy the beach. These guys enjoy living in coastal areas, and I wanted to know what we could do to have a peaceful coexistence between these two animals. Yeah, the picture was from a long time ago. Yeah, but it's nice to look back at that memory and say, you know what, that was me. I still had it. There's still some pictures in there. I still have it. I can still work with a big crocodile. But I am a naturalist. I am also cross-trained in the sea turtle department as a sea turtle biologist, so I get a chance to work in several parts and aspects of our team in the Eco Division. And if you have not heard of Miami Eco Adventures, we are like the fun part of parks that gets to connect people to nature. So you can follow us on social media or whatnot, and we'll talk about that in a little bit.
What is EECO?
Education, extension, conservation, and outreach. Okay? You put me on the spot there. My boss is back there. So we're going to talk a little bit about a couple different things. We're going to talk a little bit about taxonomy and appearance, how we can tell these animals apart, their distribution and habitat, the behavior of the American crocodile, nesting, some threats that these animals have, conservation efforts that are happening right now, and ways that you can help. So this is the taxonomy of crocodilians. There are about 24 species of crocodilian in the world, and they've all been broken up taxonomically into different groups. So they all fall under Crocodilia. And you can break these two up into Alligatoridae and Crocodilidae. So here in South Florida, the most common species of crocodilian is the American alligator, a true conservation success story. This animal was on the brink of extinction, okay? In the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, these animals were used for meat, leather. They were also taken off as pets. People thought that that'd be kind of cute. I'm going down to Florida, let me bring my grandson, nephew, niece, a souvenir, and it'll be a baby alligator. That's a terrible idea, but people did that. Alligator day and Crocodilia day very frequently are confused for just crocodiles, but there is a big distinction. So there's four main types of crocodilians: alligators, crocodiles, caiman, and gharials. And gharials are rather unique, and we'll talk about them in just a second. This species here, they have a very slender snout, and they're specialized fish eaters from India. So here you can see some images. This is a fantastic group of graphic designers called Peppermint Norwal. that do some amazing work and illustrations. It's a husband and wife team, and they are just absolutely a phenomenal artist. But you can see here the difference in the two species, in the two different types. We have alligatoridae here, which include caimans, they include alligators, and then over on this side, crocodiliidae, all the true crocodiles, gharials, and another type of crocodilian called the Themistoma, which is found in Southeast Asia. So here are some general things as to tell alligators and crocodiles apart, because we have both of them here in South Florida. You will mostly find alligators living in fresh water. Okay? Although alligators can live in brackish water, for the most part, you find them living in bodies of fresh water. They have more of a U-shaped snout. So crocodiles have a very pointy V-shaped snout. Alligators tend to have much more of a broader U-shaped snout. And they have a wider upper jaw. Their teeth are a little bit different as well. You can only see an alligator's top row of teeth. Now, if you're that close, you probably shouldn't be that close to tell the difference. You should probably take a couple steps back and appreciate this animal from afar. But that is definitely one way you can tell. If you can see here, just the top row of teeth are showing. Crocodiles are always smiling back with a full set of teeth, and they tend to live more in brackish and salt water. However, that is not always the case, and that is not true for crocodiles in all of their life stages. Some of those stages, these animals do require fresh water. We'll talk about that in just a second. Like I said, a V-shaped snout, and they have that visible kind of snaggle tooth sticking up. Another way you can tell alligators and crocodiles apart is if whether you see them after a while or if you see them later. Anybody get it? No? I should stick to studying with animals and not being a comedian. Yes?
I just wanted to find out, when we're kayaking through the area, what are we more likely to see?
Here, a crocodile for sure.
Crocodiles, okay.
90% of the, I would be surprised if you found an alligator. Okay? So here we have all of the members of the crocodile family that you will find here in South Florida. Most of them, well, I'd say 50% of them are native, and unfortunately the other 50% that you could possibly see are invasive. This is the American alligator here on the top. You can see that real broad snout, absolutely amazing body with the osteoderms. Those are scutes that they have on their back. Their skin actually has bone in it. It helps these animals thermoregulate. As I mentioned, they're cold-blooded, so they have to rely on the sun or an external source of energy to be able to metabolize and to be able to digest their food. I usually tell people, if you were a reptile and you were cold-blooded, which sometimes I feel like I might be, like when you wake up in the morning, you would have to roll out of bed and you'd have to lay in the sun for 15, 20, 30 minutes before you had enough energy to go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, any of that kind of stuff, okay? So these animals, again, rely on that external source of heat to digest and metabolize their food. The American crocodile is pictured underneath, and this animal, as you can see, is different in color as well. Alligators tend to be, when they're younger, very dark and have yellow stripes on them, help them camouflage, while crocodiles have a beautiful olive green coloring pretty much their entire life. And then we have the invasive species of crocodilian you can find here in South Florida. The Nile crocodile, which is one of the most well-known species of crocodile. You can see them in nature documentaries or whatnot. When the Great Migrations happen in Africa, these animals are the ones that are sitting there waiting on the bank, waiting to eat something like a zebra or wildebeest in Africa. They tend to be very aggressive compared to our crocodilians. Our alligators and crocodiles, they don't really want to mess with us. They are very shy, very reclusive. The Nile crocodile, it's a different story. The angriest of them all are the Cuban crocodiles. I can tell you that from experience. I've been on the receiving end of a Cuban crocodile, and I've, believe it or not, I've scaled a fence trying to get away from one. So they can be very, very aggressive. and they are the most endangered crocodilian in the Western Hemisphere. But getting back to these invasive guys, this is a spectacled caiman here, and these animals can be found here as well. Tamiami Canal, if you're familiar with the area like where FIU is or whatnot, these animals have been spotted there. How did they get here?
People bring them in.
Yeah, they didn't necessarily swim here from South America where they're from, but people have brought them in as pets and released them. That is a huge problem. So I have this cute little, alligator lizard thing that I want to get my kid because he saw it on the Discovery Channel. And I find somebody that can, get it for me, and we get it, and then it starts to grow and grow and grow and grow. And what do you do when you're done with it? Well, you called the zoo, and the zoo said, hey, we really don't have space for it. You called my nature center, and my nature center said, sorry, we're not a rescue. We don't take in animals like that. You've called everyone under the sun, and you've about had it. You just let it go, right? That's a huge problem. And that's what causes an ecological imbalance and causes these animals, like spectacled caimans, to come in and disrupt our natural ecosystems. Yes? Well, right now, okay. Like Burmese pythons, for example, right? We all know that there's a huge problem with Burmese pythons in the Everglades or whatnot. These animals have reproduced. There's thousands upon thousands of them out there. It takes thousands and thousands of dollars to care for these animals. Any of these facilities have, limited resources, limited time, limited staff availability. So because of that, a lot of these places just can't handle it. I worked at the zoo for many, many years. I was there for, almost 20 years. And I mean, we couldn't, if you were to tell me, I'm going to give you one more Burmese python to take care of, I'd say, okay, somebody else is going to do this because it's just a lot of work. So we have to think of the resources that are available, the staffing that's available, and the feasibility to have these animals, take them out of the wild, and what will we do with them afterwards if they're not to be humanely euthanized or something like that. Okay? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the American crocodile. These animals can get to be upwards of 15 feet in length. Yes, you had a question?
Yes, we have been here in Key Biscayne for 45 years, and we haven't seen before alligators or
Why is that? We'll talk about that in a minute.
have been released by someone.
Nope, that's nature being nature, and these animals making a comeback. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Why 20 years ago we didn't see very many of them, but now we see more. So these animals can weigh up to 2,000 pounds. The males are larger than the females. Their lifespan can be anywhere from 60 to 80 years, even more so in human care, in a zoological setting or in quote-unquote captivity. I hate using that word. But these animals really don't have much to worry about in that kind of setting. They have everything they need right there. Their medical care, food, entertainment. It's like living in a sandals resort for the rest of your life. These animals are listed by the IUCN, the International Union of Conservation of Nature, as vulnerable here in, as a species in general, internationally. But in 1975, these animals were listed as endangered. Since then, they have been removed off of the endangered species list because we continue to see their populations growing. These animals are now listed as threatened here in the state of Florida. So they have extra protections. Okay, it's not like alligators where there's even an open season to be able to hunt alligators. These animals don't have that. They are still threatened and very much protected federally, locally, and by the state. Okay, this is the range of the American crocodile. The American crocodile is the most widely distributed crocodile in the world. Okay, its range can come, if you look at the photo here on the right, we've been starting to see more and more crocodiles showing up further north. So areas like Cape Canaveral, things like that. So we can find them all the way over here. We found crocodiles in Tampa Bay, but the majority of crocodiles are going to be living right around here, around the Florida Keys and the coastal parts of the United States, and of course right here in Key Biscayne. This is where we see the largest concentration of them in Florida. Throughout their range, these animals in this map here, it could go down even a little bit further. We've seen crocodiles throughout South America. I've been in Costa Rica, and I could have walked across how many crocodiles there were in this river. So it's pretty amazing to see that in some places, these animals are not listed as endangered. They are listed as a common species because they don't have the threats that they face here in the United States, and especially in Florida. I'm sure weather and climate change has a lot to do with it. However, we have accelerated climate change so rapidly. As humans, we've caused an imbalance in our atmosphere that data takes a while to be able to accumulate and to be able to process. So we can speculate the issues of climate change and how it affects these animals, sea turtles, things like that, but we really won't know for years to come. Okay?
Can you eat them?
Can you eat them? I'm sure you can. People eat crocodiles and alligators. Is it legal to do so in the state of Florida? No. It is illegal to harvest these animals. So let's look at the habitat preference for the American crocodiles. These animals prefer to live in areas like ponds, creeks, coves. You can find them in mangroves and shorelines. Just this morning, Ed Pritchard, who is the interpretive program supervisor at Crandon Park for the Eco Adventures Unit, as well as the sea turtle program manager at the moment, he sent me a message. There was a little crocodile on Crandon Beach at Lifeguard Station 1, scurried his way right into the water. I don't know who was more afraid, Ed or the crocodile, because I'm pretty certain they both caught each other off guard. But we can see that this is a percentage of places where these animals like to live, and which of these is a marine habitat? These tend to be marine, these tend to be freshwater, and what we can see is that it's about 50-50, right? And that's because we have to talk about hatchling crocodiles and their habitat preference. Adult crocodiles have the ability to live in salt water. The Australian saltwater crocodile has made its impact on the world, and everyone thinks, when you think of a crocodile, saltwater crocodile. We can think Steve Irwin, we can think the crocodiles of Australia for their popularity, their charisma, their aggressiveness, everything like that. However, not all crocodiles are like that. Adult crocodiles, adult American crocodiles, actually have a gland that helps them filter out salt. So when you live in a saltwater environment, you're technically living in a desert. You can't ingest that water. That water can be harmful to most animals, things like that. So most animals that live in saltwater habitats have specialized kidneys or glands to be able to survive. Let's change gears a little bit and take a dolphin, for example. A bottlenose dolphin is going to be swimming out through the water, right? In salt water. That's where dolphins live. Where does it get its water from? This aquarium person in the back, feel free to chime in whenever you like. Do they drink water from the ocean, though? No, dolphins do not drink water from the ocean.
There's freshwater wells.
There's freshwater wells, but dolphins don't do that. They don't go up and drink that. Former aquarium person, my boss now.
They get their water from the food they eat.
From the food that they eat. So they don't have the ability to drink salt water. Most of those animals don't. Manatees, for example, don't drink salt water. They drink fresh water. And a PSA, don't give them water with a hose, please. That's very dangerous for them. It teaches them to come up to water and be able to interact with humans, get struck by boats, which is a huge problem. But these animals have the ability to process salt as adults. As hatchlings, they do not. They need to have access to fresh water. If not, they're living in a desert and it can be very detrimental to their health. They're very shy and reclusive animals. They tend to be more solitary in this region of the world. However, as I've said, I have seen them congregating in very, very large groups. in other places in the world. In Jamaica and the Caribbean, these animals tend to be also solitary, but in areas where we find higher densities of them, for example, Costa Rica, Central America, we see them living more in social groups and a little bit of a different type of social behavior. They're cold-blooded and ectothermic. We've talked all about that. And these animals feed on small mammals. Small mammals. We're not a small mammal by any stretch of the imagination. Birds, frogs, turtles, fish, those kinds of animals. It is not uncommon to find a manatee and a crocodile just swimming next to each other. And you might be wondering, well, that's a pretty decent meal, right? Well, you have to think about it. A manatee's not just going to say, okay, I'll let you eat me now. I'm going to die. That manatee's going to fight back. And that's not enough effort for that crocodile to put into that to eat that animal. It's not enough, as a friend of mine would say, it's not enough sugar for a dime. It's just not going to pan out. It's not worth its effort. So these animals are going to try to hunt things that are much smaller and easier to survive in. So my office is located in Palmetto Bay. If anyone's familiar with that area, near Pinecrest, we are right next to the Deering Estate, and there is an old building there that has now been turned into the Palmetto Bay Town Center, Village Center, something like that. That area is very interesting because at one point, is anyone here familiar with Ocean Reef? So Ocean Reef was built, and these folks thought, you know what, we're going to build another Ocean Reef, we're going to build it on the mainland. They tried to get these permits, they illegally dynamited a giant lagoon there, and obviously the government was like, whoa, what are you doing? And that project was scrapped. That later became the Burger King headquarters. Now it's the Palmetto Bay Village Center. It's a big lagoon there that's fed by salt water. Those crocodiles almost exclusively eat crabs. Those blue land crabs that you may see crossing Old Cutler Road sometimes if you're up on the mainland, things like that, that is what those animals are eating. This giant crocodile is eating these little crabs, which is very interesting. They don't want to waste all that energy. So, should you be afraid of a crocodile? No, you shouldn't necessarily be afraid of a crocodile. Should you respect a crocodile? Absolutely. If I get in anyone's space, I'm more than likely to interfere with someone, or they'd be like, oh, can you take a step back? And a crocodile really can't tell you that. The only way they can do that is through kind of saying, being aggressive. So these animals feed on small animals. Like we said, small mammals. Your dog, right, your little Pomeranian or something like that is considered a small mammal. So it is always important to keep them on a leash. It is the law for a reason, and that's to help protect animals like this. Unfortunately, I had a situation that I was made aware of. There was a crocodile that lived just about 5 minutes from my home in Palmetto Bay in a canal off of 87th Avenue there. And it was such a cool crocodile because he had half of a jaw. His upper jaw was missing. A very unique animal, easy to spot. If any of you guys are on social media or anything like that, you may have noticed that there is an alligator right now that was rescued that also is missing the upper part of its jaw. It's in Orlando at Gatorland. However, this animal is super easy to recognize and lived quite peacefully around there, but not having the upper part of your jaw, being a crocodile, you could imagine, is not an easy way to survive. But this guy did it, however it did. Someone called and complained that their dog had been killed by this crocodile. My first question was, did you put it in its mouth, or how did that happen? Because this crocodile obviously was not at 100%. So this person had to have been pretty careless for this to happen. They called, they made a complaint, they relocated the crocodile to an area. The crocodile there had competition with another crocodile that was there, probably was there for about 6-7 months before the animal passed away. So unfortunate, right? That happened to that animal because someone was being irresponsible. Someone was just saying, I'm just going to let Fifi run around and check things out, and it unfortunately cost this crocodile and Fifi their lives. So these animals play an important role in estuary ecosystems. That is why we want to keep them there. These animals are going to be important in keeping balance in food chains and food webs, and they are a sign of a healthy ecosystem. This is a top predator. It is on the top of its food chain. So that means when you see a crocodile in an ecosystem like this, that everything underneath it is healthy enough to support that animal, okay? You have the smaller animals, the microorganisms, the plants, everything is there to be able to allow an animal like this to survive and hopefully thrive. So they are reptiles, and reptiles, for the most part, are going to be laying eggs. There's very few exceptions to that. But these animals are true egg layers. They're oviparous, so they are going to be laying eggs that are in a hole, very similar to like a sea turtle, for example. Some crocodiles tend to do mounds. We've seen that in different islands in Florida, but we tend to see more of a cavity nesting than any other type of nesting for these animals. And the nests are just a few inches deep. They're not very deep. It's not like you'd have to, the female crocodile is digging for days and days. She usually will make that nest very quickly, deposit her eggs, anywhere between 30 and 60 or so eggs. And the incubation time for those eggs is going to vary, but oftentimes it's going to be anywhere between 80 to 90 days, so just around 3 months. Okay, it's like saying with a human, gestation is 9 months, but sometimes if that little bun has been baking for a long time, they might come at, instead of 9 months, might be 9 months and a week or so, or the baby might come in a little early. And this is really cool because just like other animals that we might be more familiar with here on the Key, like sea turtles, they are temperature determined. Their sex is temperature determined. So they are not going to be just randomly by genetics, whether they're male or female. That is going to be caused by the temperature. What's the problem with that? Anybody see a potential problem? Climate change, absolutely. I don't know about you all, but it has been the hottest that it has ever been. I mean, I say that every summer, but now science is backing me up and saying, you know what, Willie, it's not because you're getting old, or it's not because you're making things up, it's not in your mind. Yes, it was the hottest summer on record. And what happens is, as the temperature increases, these animals, their temperature is determining their sex. So one easy way to remember that is that the hotter they are, they're female, so we have hot chicks. And then you have the cooler ones, which are cool dudes. So oftentimes the depth and the way that the nest is laid is going to be instrumental to having that perfect ratio of animals being born, because if we have all female crocodiles, that's a problem. If we have all male crocodiles, again, that's another problem. So it's very interesting to see that. Now that is very helpful in zoological settings, for example. So if we have a crocodile, let's say I've worked with Cuban crocodiles before, and I've excavated nests that they've laid and have the eggs for incubation. If we incubate the eggs a little bit warmer, we'll have some females. Let's say we have a lot of males in that population, so we can do that. Or let's say, hey, we're very low on males, we'll keep this nest or this clutch a little bit cooler. So that's very helpful in zoological settings. However, not very helpful when Mother Nature can't seem to control the thermostat because of climate change and the things that we've done to our planet. The mother excavates the nest to release the babies. Now that is something to me that is mind-blowing, because crocodiles are oftentimes referred to as the mammals of the reptile world. When mammals have a baby, they have usually a very long kind of relationship with their offspring. Their offspring are born helpless usually, and they need to be kind of cared for, so on and so forth. Most reptiles lay their eggs and just get out of there. Very few of them have that kind of maternal instinct or care. Sea turtles, for example, they'll come lay their nest, they'll come lay another nest, they'll lay another one, and then, you know what, I'm out. I have things to do, I've got to go get in the current and go away. Babies, you're on your own. When you hatch, get out and, you know, may the force be with you, and hope you make it out there. These guys do something very interesting. When the babies are developing in the nest and they start to get older, they're starting to get ready to that point where they're going to hatch, these animals will start to pip. So if you've heard of an alligator or crocodile hatchling make a sound that ew, 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 ew. So they start to make that in the egg. And the crocodile mother can hear that, and she starts to spend more and more time around her nest. And once she hears that they're ready to come out, she will start to dig up that nest, and she will actually help the babies go into the water. She will pick them up and carry them into the water in her jaws. This is an animal that has over 2,000 pounds of pressure per square inch in its jaws. Okay? It could grab something like a turtle and smash it with its jaws and swallow it in just a few seconds. But it's also gentle enough to pick up a baby in its mouth and carry it to the water. Absolutely brilliant and amazing that they can do that. So it's really neat to see that maternal care is there. Just recently, within the last year, it's been observed that American crocodiles have actually brought food to their young. Food sharing is one of those very important things in the animal world. Just a little animal behavior kind of 101. If I share food to you, that means that I can provide for you. What happens on most first dates? You go to movie and dinner. That's your way of saying, I can provide, I'll entertain you, but I can provide for you too. That's what happens in the animal kingdom. We can see that a lot with mammals for the most part. We see that a lot with monogamous animals. We see that a lot between parents, between parent and an offspring. With reptiles, again, not that high level of maternal care, but recently we've observed that crocodiles have brought food to their hatchlings and said, this is for you. So the parent is putting the babies before itself, which is amazing. And about only 1 in 10 will make it to adulthood. Survival rates are very low for these animals, and that is why they have so many babies at a time. We can look at other animals, for example, possums. They have a ton of babies, right? And I can tell you when I was a really young kid and I had started working in this field with wildlife conservation and working with zoology, and I, of course, would come across animals that needed to be rescued and rehabbed. I worked with a local rehabber, and they would send me home with an animal that I'd have to help them raise to, hopefully release. And I was most oftentimes a possum, and most oftentimes those possums didn't make it. And I would get so upset about it. And I remember this one guy coming in and saying, "Why do you think they have 100 babies at a time?" Makes sense now that he said it. But it's those animals oftentimes are not going to be very successful in making it to adulthood. That's why they have so many of them. After hatching, the babies tend to stay close to their mother, and they will form little social groups in and of themselves. Like I mentioned, they do emit that small call to their mother. Most of you guys have guessed that we did bring a crocodile for you guys to see. Hopefully that little guy will vocalize and you can hear what that sounds like. It'll call when it's in distress. It'll call when it's trying to call its mother. I've seen them call when they're excited as well. I don't think it's necessarily just a distress call. In our office, we have an alligator. Well, anytime you do something really fun in there, like let's say, for example, I'll throw in 100 crickets or so, and there's just crickets galore. It's like a buffet in there. I hear him vocalizing, and I oftentimes would equate that to being excited, not necessarily in distress. And like I mentioned, only 1 in 10 make it to adulthood. That is a low number, but we can do things to help change that. We think those numbers are so low, again, because survivability rate, but humans also have placed bigger stressors on these animals, things like the hunting and hide trade. I mean, who doesn't want a crocodile skin purse or wallet, right? We have to think about where those things are coming from when we buy them. because unfortunately they can have an effect on wild populations of animals. When we see alligators, alligator meat now, for example, right? That is somewhat acceptable, right? It's not like, oh, you're eating an alligator. And that's because these animals have been farmed now, and we have a hold of their conservation. But something like a crocodile purse, you may want to ask some questions. Where did this come from? How was this harvested? What country did this originate from? So on and so forth, so that we can be aware. And of course, they make plenty of things that look just like crocodile skin and isn't, okay? Habitat destruction, mainly in the coastal regions. We're all probably guilty of this. We all enjoy the beaches. We live near the water. I know I do. And we need to be cautious of when we're living in these areas. For one, being respectful, knowing that these animals have been here since the time of dinosaurs, long before we were. The only thing that was around, I think the only person that was around at that time was my mother-in-law. So, I mean, other than that, these crocodiles have been here much longer than any of us humans. So it's important that we realize this was their home first, and we should share it with them. Coastal development, making sure that if we are going to be in a coastal habitat, that we understand that we could live with these animals and we could have a peaceful coexistence, because again, they're not out to get us. We want to make sure that we're careful with our children, we're careful with our animals, but these animals are living here and it's okay to live near them. Hydrological alterations, what do you think we mean by that? Here in South Florida, it's a huge issue. Yes, Vanessa? Dams. And what else, what do we see with dams usually? Rivers and lakes? This isn't a TLC song. Yes, canals. So we look at that, we have canals. Humans here in South Florida especially, we have rerouted water so that this isn't a swamp. This was a swamp at one point, and humans have altered that in the benefit of humans being able to live here and make this a habitable area for us, as well as for agriculture. And when this water is moved from one place to the next, it causes the bay to be saltier. And that is, again, an issue for hatchling crocodiles. So we've seen in areas that crocodiles at one point used to live, they no longer live there because we have altered the flow of water throughout South Florida, coming in naturally going into the bay. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the restoration that's been done and how that works. These animals can be afflicted by disease, so that is yet another obstacle and threat that they can face, just like all wildlife, and invasive species. Like we talked about with that spectacled caiman, oh, it's very cute, I got it for my kid, they really wanted one, I let it go, and it just takes two to tango, and then you have a whole mess on your hands. American crocodiles are egg layers. There's an invasive species here called the Argentine black and white tegu. Has anyone heard of a tegu? Okay, it is a lizard from South America. They are absolutely gorgeous. I have worked with them for many years. I absolutely love them. I think they're one of the most interesting lizards in the world. However, they're specialized egg eaters. So what happens, these animals are going to be affected by things like invasive species. Just now, one of the largest, or if not the largest, concentration of American crocodiles in South Florida happens to be at Turkey Point and the Florida Power and Light plant. So these cooling canals are there. They provide a freshwater area for these animals, and it has quite a bit of land mass that these animals are undisturbed and are living very well and breeding. However, right now, just this year, a baby tegu was found in one of those in Florida Power and Light. And that's a problem because these animals are going to start predating on crocodile nests. So why should we study American crocodiles? We know they're cool, they live around us, but it is always important to know more and more about them, especially with all the effects that we have put and the stressors that we've added to these animals. There is a scientific need to do this in the community. We need to continue to learn more about them because we are consistently evolving in how we're doing things, where we're putting buildings, where humans are living. All of those things have an effect. And it's important to be proactive instead of reactive. So crocodile numbers are on the rise. Because of that, it's important that we say, hey, let's get ahead of the game, and we know how we can mitigate this problem and be able to handle human-crocodile conflicts between people and these animals, being able to raise awareness. And just today, you all are taking the first step in learning about these animals, and I hope that you leave here wanting to share this information so that other people realize this isn't an animal that's out to get us. It's not something we should be afraid of, or you see a crocodile, I need to call Fish and Wildlife and have them remove this animal right away. That's not necessarily the case, okay? And like I said, community engagement within these animals. We have a couple things that is important, and in the Parks Department, we really stand for several things, and one of them is that we have pillars within our conservation and things that we look forward to doing. And protecting crocodiles helps us fall into all of those things. For example, Everglades restoration and studying the effects of sea level rise. Both of those things will have an effect on American crocodiles. As sea level rises, we have less and less nesting availability for these animals. They're going to start to compete with other animals potentially for nesting sites and habitat. We also see that as we continue to do things like Everglades restoration, allowing water to flow more naturally through the state down into the bay, we see crocodile populations increase, and these animals are starting to be found, especially hatchlings, in areas where they used to not be found after canals and water was distributed in different places. We focus a lot on invasive species here in Miami-Dade County as well. And the educational component of projects like this, when we talk about American crocodiles, has the biggest impact, because it's awareness about these animals and the impacts that they may have on native species, like I had mentioned with the Argentine black and white tegu. A lot of places now, like for example, Florida Power and Light, they use trail cameras in their areas. Their crocodile biologist is a very good friend of mine. We used to be my intern many years ago. I'm very proud of him to see him kind of go up and take this role in helping protect American crocodiles. But he sent me a picture the other day of an American crocodile heading towards the nest, and it was probably around 10:30 at night or so. And he said, and I said, "Oh, you're out in the field?" He said, "No, I'm sitting on my couch." And he had a remote access to be able to see these animals out in the wild and to be able to kind of study what they're doing. So technology is super helpful in being able to protect wildlife. And of course, wildlife conservation is something that is very important. I hate reading from a slide, but this is one of the most important things that I have ever understood about American crocodiles or conservation. And public education must provide the foundation for developing positive, proactive attitudes about crocodile conservation. Aggressive public education is probably the most effective tool available to ensure the continued growth and recovery of South Florida's American crocodile population. So, thank you guys. Because that, yes, you can give that a round of applause, because you guys are the first step in helping to protect these animals just by understanding, hey, this isn't this monster that they're made out to be. Here's some ways that we study crocodiles. I know this is all about citizen science, and we are and have actively been trying to start up a crocodile citizen science program. And being able to come out into the community and talk to people about it is the first step. We've worked with several different crocodile biologists and advisors to be able to come up with ways that we can start to study these animals. And now it's just a matter of being able to put these things in place and finding the community to be able to step up and want to help contribute to science. Because science isn't just some person in a lab coat working in a laboratory. Science can be done by anyone and everyone, and that's important that we realize that. So collecting citizen science data, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Spotlight surveys, that's a very interesting way that we study crocodiles, being able to do population counts, and we do that using a spotlight. Drone surveys, that's something that is relatively new, just next week I think. They're having their first conference in Texas in regards to using drones and studying reptiles, and drone work has gone leaps and bounds. In Africa, for example, anti-poaching units have been trained on how to use drones, so that when an anti-poaching unit, let's say they're working with some species of primate or something that they're trying to protect, when they come in conflict with poachers, the drone is coming in conflict with the poacher. They're going to take down maybe a $600 piece of material, not take down several people's lives that are trying to protect these animals. And then there's photographic evidence. These animals can be better protected. Those poachers can be better prosecuted as well. Nesting surveys and monitoring, that's done pretty regularly, even here on Key Biscayne. Collecting hatchling data and doing spatial surveys on adults. How much of this area are these adults using? Are their social behaviors changing because their populations are increasing? So on and so forth. So this is what we know. Crocodiles were downlisted from endangered to threatened. Their population is increasing due to conservation efforts such as those at Turkey Point. Turkey Point has had a very long-standing crocodile conservation program where they actually go out, collect hatchlings, tag them, release them, and it's a capture and recapture study that these people perform, being able to have longitudinal data over time to be able to see how this population is growing and how it is doing. What do we want to know? These are some of the questions that I've come up with, and other crocodile biologists have agreed. Like, what do we want to know? As the population increases and freshwater restoration continues, how is this affecting the spatial use of habitat selection for crocodiles? How are they saying, this is where I want to have my nest, or this is where I want to be able to set up an area and a territory for me to be able to forage and be able to live my life in essence? Are they establishing new territories, or are they displacing individuals? So all of these crocodiles that are hatching out in areas, you had mentioned before that you didn't see crocodiles before, right? You said you'd lived, how long have you lived here in Key Biscayne? For 45 years. You've lived here, and now you're just starting to see these animals kind of pop up. Yes, you're absolutely right. On Saturday or Sunday morning, I saw there was a crocodile in Crandon Park that was crossing through, and one of our sea turtle biologists found it and send us some photos of it. That's amazing. And we're starting to see more and more of these animals pop up in places like pools and things of that nature, coming into conflict or contact with humans because their numbers are increasing. Their numbers are coming back to a more natural state. So as that's happening, what's happening to the ones that have been there, the old timers that have survived here? Are they getting displaced, or are these animals having to find new territories? Is this why we're finding them in places like Cape Canaveral? Okay. And how will monitoring programs change the perception or views of American crocodiles? Anybody think of an animal that you can jump online right now and track or monitor and know where it's at? Sharks, yeah. So a lot of people will follow sharks. I think there was a great, and I'm going to be 100% transparent with you, that is, sharks are one of my biggest fears in life. Every time I get into the water, I'm always thinking that there's Jaws is right behind me. It's very sad. Yep, Heather said she's going to get me over that fear someday. But not really a big fan of sharks. But I would track Katie like it was my job, because I wanted to make sure that Katie the great white, who was running around the Florida Keys the same time I was, her and I weren't going to be in the same pond, in essence, anytime soon. But that's raising so much awareness about sharks. Could the same thing happen with crocodiles? Does have a downside. Tracking a great white shark in the middle of the ocean or potentially finding it isn't very likely, but finding a crocodile on our coastline is. So having that data available could lead to potential poaching and things like that, but it also raises a lot of awareness, and it's really cool. You can have little kids start to map and project where these animals are going to go. I think they're going to move north. I think they're going to move south. All of those things that can happen. And among many more conclusions on these questions that we can have, I mean, there's so many questions that can come up about American crocodiles. Now, this is what I was talking about those hypersaline solutions. These animals, you can see that right here, lower salinity has a greater chance of these animals making it into adulthood and surviving, as opposed to in hypersaline solutions, they don't grow as fast. These animals don't tend to survive as well because these animals are not having the access to crucial things like fresh water. And that's unfortunate because it's been completely correlated to us altering the flow of water. So when we do citizen science, who collects citizen science data? Citizens, exactly. You, me, anyone. And that's really important. And science should be made accessible to everyone, regardless of your race, your ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, any of those things. Science should be accessible to everyone. And that's the beauty of citizen science. And citizen science under researchers, because the researchers are the ones that put together the data sheets and how we would collect the data to make sure that it is viable research that we're doing. And that is really interesting because that is something we're looking to develop so that we can have people surveying at different areas, like marinas where we come into conflict or contact with crocodiles, things like restaurants. For example, in my neck of the woods, Black Point Marina, there's always crocodiles near the restaurant there. I can always tell when a crocodile's out in the bay because everyone gets up and everyone goes over to see them because, again, it's a very interesting thing to see. And locations are super important. As I mentioned, this is my preferred area of study because it's right down the street from my home. It's right down the street from my work location. And this is Black Point Marina. There's crocodiles there that are found very commonly, and we're starting to see hatchlings in those areas. How are they moving, and how much of this area are they using? Yes?
Do we know how many crocodiles there are?
Right.
In Key Biscayne right now, I think it's impossible to give you an exact number. I can try to give you an estimate. I can reach out to the folks over at UF that have been doing the population studies here. But those surveys happen in an interesting way. When you go out in a spotlight, you're shining a light. Crocodiles have something in their eyes called a tapetum lucidum. So that means that it's a reflective membrane. If you've ever seen like eyes, cat eyes or a raccoon in your headlights, that is the same thing. And that's how we do that. We go out and we survey, okay, there's a crocodile here, there's a crocodile there. We can estimate population densities by doing that. And I can see the last couple surveys that they've done, and I can try to, I'll send Rumia some information about that and she can pass it along. But my estimate would probably be about 100 or so juveniles, maybe about 20 adults, and I'd say here in Key Biscayne, I'd probably say like 100 juveniles or so, maybe 20, 25 adults.
Where on Key Biscayne are they basically local?
I wish I knew that. Everywhere. In any body of water in Florida, you can say. You see them in the gardens, yeah, most definitely, but they can be found anywhere. Yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised if we start to find crocodiles crossing the road and things here, and that's okay because these animals are expanding their population. If you come face to face with a crocodile, my advice would be to watch where you're going first off so that you don't come face to face with it, because most of the time you're not just going to stumble up and say, oh, there's a crocodile in front of me. But if you see a crocodile, there could be a crocodile from me to you. And that's okay. I'm not trying to get up and touch it, ride it, do any of those things. Use the zoom on your iPhone to take a picture of it if you want, but just calmly walk away from it. Do they move fast? Absolutely. They can move 30 miles an hour. But does a crocodile want to eat you? No, we talked about that earlier. Crocodiles don't want to eat humans. It's too much effort. They want to eat small things like fish, crabs, birds. Okay, so why is this important? As we educate citizens about Florida wildlife, we can raise awareness because, again, this is an important species to have living in this area. It is all connected in a circle of life and a web that is important. By directly involving the community, this increases the access to social equality, and it involves other people in citizen science. Researchers will gain experience, and it'll allow these folks to be able to have further projects with different species across the table, which is very important, as you were mentioning earlier. And this is some of the interesting ways, as I mentioned, the spotlight surveys that we use to be able to conduct to find these animals. Drone surveys is something that is relatively new, as I had mentioned, and that is being done to increase the productivity while it is allowing people to have better quality research because we're taking the human error out of the equation. This is really interesting. We've been able to track and identify individual crocodiles using their scoot marks to be able to tell who is who. And this is an interesting study that was done right here at Crandon Park. These were thermal imaging drones, and we were able to see baby hatchling crocodiles using this thermal imaging, which is very interesting and had never really been done before. This is what a crocodile nest looks like. We could look for these nests. As you see, it's kind of been dug up by the mother, and that's allowing the babies to hatch and go out into those areas. And this is very important to be able to study new nesting sites, where these animals are going, and being able to understand how they're moving. This is all types of nesting data that's collected, which is important to know where the vegetation is, what type of substrate it is, how far from the water these nests are, the dimensions of the nest, fertility, success and failure rates of nests. All of those things are very important. And once you do have those nests and the nests hatch out, this is what it looks like when we process baby crocodiles. They are, one of the things that we do is we ensure that these animals are healthy. We take measurements on them. We give them a PIT tag or a microchip to study them as an individual, so later on we can tell who they are. And we also give them an identifier on their body by clipping the scoots to tell which crocodile is which.
What's a scoop?
A scoot is one of the raised scales on a crocodile's back. The scoots are located in this area, and those are the raised scales. And this is how they mark them. They actually cut the scoots so that they have almost like a tattoo on them. This is a permanent marker to be able to tell which crocodilian, because it's done with alligators and crocodiles, is which. And this is what baby hatchlings look like. This is how in the field they transport them to be able to study and see where they're at, and be able to take them into the lab to monitor them. Biological samples are also collected from these animals so we can study the effects that pollution has had on them, and so on and so forth. And the environmental measures of the area where these animals are at. What is the salinity of the water, the air temperature, the habitat, what is going on in that water itself? Is it involved with fertilizers, things like that that could affect things with crocodiles. It's very dangerous to handle American crocodiles up close like this, so there's a lot of training that has happened and happens to go along with people handling crocodiles. How do you get the tape off of an adult crocodile's mouth once you've restrained it? Things like that are things that crocodile biologists are trained to do. We're also trained to put in satellite transmitters on them. This is a small surgical procedure that's done in the field to attach a transmitter to allow that signal to be given off through satellite networks, and that way we can track this animal in real time, which is pretty amazing. And this is a whole bunch of science that is not really that interesting, but this is all the data that would be collected, or that is collected when we do these spatial studies. And 60 to 80 years, okay? All right, I'm gonna run through these slides because time is of the essence. It is getting late. Our end goal is that when we combine our passion for wildlife and our passion for South Florida, we can truly make something like this happen so that we can study these animals. Last year we were releasing hatchling crocodiles. Those are little baby hatchling crocodiles in my hand there that are being released out into the wild so that these animals could hopefully go on to reproduce and we can have more of biodiversity in this area, which is again very important and key to life. So thank you all so much for coming and learning about American crocodiles. As I mentioned, we do have a baby crocodile. If you all are interested in seeing that baby, you're more than welcome to. If you do touch the animal, we ask that you please sanitize your hands afterwards. If you guys have any questions, I'll be up here to answer them, as well as all of our information is up here. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. That is my email address there, or you can message us on Facebook or Instagram, and we'd be happy to answer your questions, all right? Thank you guys so, so much. I appreciate it. This crocodile is no more than about 3 months old.
And I was doing birds.